All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the International Methods Colloquium. The IMC is a periodic online interactive seminar discussion on the application of quantitative statistical methodology to the social sciences, sponsored by Rice University and the National Science Foundation. This week, the IMC hosts a roundtable discussion on gender in political science and methodology in conjunction with the Women Also Know Stuff initiative. We're pleased to host 4 participants in the panel. Emily Beaulieu of the University of Kentucky, Melissa Michelson of Menlo College, Christina Wolbrecht of the University of Notre Dame, and Amber Boydstun of the University of California at Davis. Each member of the roundtable is going to take about 7 to 10 minutes to make a brief presentation with a little slideshow, after which point we'll take questions from the audience. You can ask a question using the Zoom Q&A button that appears at the bottom of the webinar window. A link to the slides that go along with the presenter's discussion will be available in the Zoom webinar chat window. I'll post that right after we get started so that you may refer to it throughout the presentation. And now I'd like to welcome our panel. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so I got before the talk today, I got an order of presentation. So I understand, Emily, you're going to get started?
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
Well, thanks so much, Justin. Thanks to everyone for attending, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share information about the Women Also Know Stuff initiative with the political methodology community. If I can figure out how to advance my slides. There we go. Hazel Morrow-Jones and Jan Bach-Steffensmeyer published a really great piece in 2014 in the Political Methodologist newsletter talking about implicit bias. And we at Women Also Know Stuff recognize implicit bias as really what we're trying to combat in perceptions of who has expertise among political scientists. And we can certainly apply that logic to political methodology as well, trying to shift the conversation about whose input should matter, whose expertise counts. We do that by maintaining a website with a searchable database of women experts in political science, as well as a very active social media presence on Twitter, both of which my colleagues are going to say more about in a moment. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about who we are and how we came to be. So Samara Klar founded the website in just February of this year. We now have over 1,000 expert profiles on the website and more than 5,000 followers on Twitter. So we've grown a lot very quickly. We're particularly proud that this year we received the Mansbridge Award from the Women's Caucus for Political Science of the APSA, and that we've inspired others to sort of take a similar approach in promoting underrepresented groups who should receive more recognition for their expertise, such as people of color also know stuff. There are 10 of us on the editorial board. This is a volunteer effort. Our ranks range from assistant to full professor. We're in institutions all across the country. And so far we do it all. We run the website, we run the Twitter account, we figure out how to institutionalize the initiative. We deal with promotional efforts and branding and outreach and trying to seek funding to sustain and continue what we're doing. Now, one of the reasons this was such an exciting opportunity is because POLMETH, the Society of Political Methodology, already recognizes that women are underrepresented in political methodology and already has initiatives that are trying to address this issue. And so we thought this was a great opportunity to sort of connect on that point. And in fact, I want to point out that 3 of the board members listed here have all attended Visions in Methodology conference. And I myself have also benefited from the NSF funding that is available for women and people from underrepresented groups to attend the summer methods meeting. So I want to take a minute and say a little bit more about the Visions in Methodology initiative and how we might think about it from the perspective of what Women Also Know Stuff is trying to accomplish. So Visions in Methodology is this fantastic NSF-funded program to promote women in methodology that features an annual conference that not only have 3 of us attended, but Amber and I have each co-hosted conferences at our respective institutions. And this year, one of our other editorial board members, Yana Krupnikov, is hosting the conference at Stony Brook. And applications are out, so please encourage the women that you know to apply. The idea behind the conference is to promote an atmosphere where women with interest in methodology can discuss their research, receive mentorship, engage in networking, and sort of build opportunities to further enhance the expertise of women in the field of political methodology. So some survey research that Yana and I have conducted along with Tiffany Barnes, which has also appeared in the Political Methodologist and is now also forthcoming at PS, finds that when we compare women who've attended a Visions conference to comparable women and men who we chose a group to be comparable by simply surveying everyone at any institution from which a VIM attendee came, we see some interesting differences emerging that we think are important. So I want to share a couple of those with you. So when we ask people who took our survey a variety of questions, do you have someone you consider a mentor? Do you have someone beyond your advisor that you consider a mentor? Do you have someone outside your institution that you consider a mentor? There, what you see with that dark gray shaded bar is that VIM attendees reply at higher rates that they have these experiences, that they have these mentorship opportunities and relationships across all those questions. And then we see there's also this question about support for peers, and where we get sort of a significant divide between women who've attended VIM and others who we surveyed is with the mentor outside the institution and support from peers questions. And so if we think about trying to promote women's expertise in a particular field, having broader connections of individuals from whom you can receive mentorship, who often serve as those promoters of your work, and having more support from peers certainly seems like it's going to facilitate some of that goal. Then if we think about the research productivity side of thing, which obviously can also contribute to perceptions of expertise, here's what we see. When we asked folks who took this survey about how many articles do you submit for peer review on average, or did you submit in the last year, is actually what we asked. Here are the averages that break down. And for this, we chose to look at faculty because the grad students in the sample are close to finishing up their degrees, but likely not yet in the kind of position where regular publishing is going to be as much of a priority for them. And what we see is that the highest reported average comes from women who've attended VIM, with it being comparable, essentially, to male faculty members, but significantly different from average article submission rates for women who were in our sample and have not attended the conference. The final issue related to submitting articles that we think is particularly critical when we think about perceptions of expertise is where are people submitting their work. And here people could choose multiple outlets to say that they were submitting work to. But what you should see with these two black bars that stand out over here is that women who've attended VIM, and particularly faculty members who've attended VIM, report sending their work to sort of top general journals at higher rates than anyone else that we surveyed. And we think about what is ultimately going to lead to someone being perceived as an expert. Publication in top outlets in our field is likely to facilitate those perceptions. Now, clearly, VIM attendance is not random, so we can't make any causal claims about these differences, though I will say two things. The first is that these differences are consistent with what has been found to happen in similar programs in econ where invitation to the program actually was random. So randomized versions of small concentrated conferences with an emphasis on mentorship and networking see in particular higher rates of grant getting and publication productivity among their attendees. So it's consistent with work where we might be able to make a stronger causal claim. The other thing I think we would argue from the perspective of Women Also Know Stuff is even if there's no causal effect here, even if all we are seeing is that a certain type of well-networked, hardworking, ambitious woman is attracted to the Visions opportunity, the idea of a forum that brings women like that together to strengthen networks and again start to shift perceptions of who has expertise is probably incredibly valuable in its own right. So the last thing I will say before I hand it over is again that I want to remind folks that opportunities to receive funds to offset travel to the Paul Meth summer meeting are also available. And I think those are critically important because Visions is wonderful for the ways that it can bring women together, open mentorship opportunities and enhance networks. But the next critical aspect of shifting perceptions of women's expertise in methodology is to get women engaging with men in the subfield. And so I think that is just another critical point. I have certainly enjoyed the summer meetings that I've attended. And if a Women Also Know Stuff editorial board member comes to a Paul Meth summer meeting, there may be some stickers, is all I'm going to say. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleagues.
I just want to say I hosted the last meeting and I did not get any stickers.
Oh, no.
Didn't have them then. That's all I'm going to say. They were new as of APSA.
Melissa, you're up next, according to my list.
Fantastic. Oh, and now I've already messed it up because I'm on the wrong slide. So, and I'm messing it up. Dang it. What?
That little arrow up there.
Yep, little arrow.
Quiet, almost.
What little arrow, this one?
No,
over.
Over, where it's
Go
like
left.
giving you pages left.
Left.
Yes?
There.
Yes.
Yay!
Yay.
Sorry about that. So I want to talk about the Women Also Know Stuff website, which hopefully all of the women that you know and all the women out there watching this webinar are already part of. Maybe one of the biggest parts of what the Women Also Know Stuff initiative is doing is getting women to upload a profile on our website so that folks who are planning a conference, looking for guest speakers, maybe just doing some research, and they want to make sure they're citing all the relevant knowledge, and then also for the media, that they don't just rely on who pops up to the top of their head, because then of course implicit bias means that women are going to be less likely to be included and less likely to be asked, but that they will find women experts and use them. And we have all of these wonderful aspects of the website, an ability to add yourself as a scholar, which you can only do it yourself, you can't add others, but more for everybody is the search option, where you can search for people. You know, if you're looking for someone to explain to you what just happened with that election we just had, you would go here and search for an expert. So most of the time when people upload their profiles, they're including words in their which categories of political science they cover, and then specific keywords that describe their research. So you might say, well, I do experiments and I do LGBT politics, but then in keywords you're going to put in more specific things that's going to help people find you, like Trump or racial resentment or transphobia or things like that, so that people who are writing or planning a meeting about a specific thing can actually find the scholars that are of most interest to them. And so it's really a lovely website. Our web goddess has refined it and responded to requests for updating it in ways that just make it super useful and super easy. And of course, if you have a profile on the website, you want to make sure that you include very specific keywords, because that's what people are using. So you don't want to just say, I'm an expert on elections. You want to say, I'm an expert on white working class or racial resentment or whatever, or Trump, so that people can actually find you. So if you haven't already, we hope that all the women out there, and that you will encourage the women out there, will do so and build a profile. They're really easy to do and easy to use. You get to choose a photo. You get to say whether or not you want to be contacted by the media, or if really all you're interested in is academic inclusion, speakers and panels, and maybe reviewing, things like that. You get to put in whichever links you think are relevant. You can update it as often as you like. And we definitely want people to not only upload their profiles, but make sure that they're kept updated. So as you publish more work, or as you engage in more scholarship, as events are happening in the world, and maybe you feel like, okay, now there's something new going on where I need to make sure people know that I'm somebody who can talk about that. I'm somebody they should be reading about that. And I think a lot of folks, for example, who teach about elections are all revising their syllabi this week. And so if you want people to find your stuff and have maybe a new appreciation for the relevance of your work, it's important to then update what you've got in there. We have a lot of experts, over 1,000 experts on our site. Most of them are PhDs, but we do allow graduate students to join as well. And of course, all of us who mentor grad students and have grad students talk to them a lot about branding and establishing an online presence and all of that stuff. This is an easy way to add to that branding and online presence, is to get your women grad students to get onto our list. It does say on the site if they have their PhD in hand or not. So folks who are maybe looking for people to join their editorial board or looking for speakers, they know who they're reaching out to, but it's definitely open to graduate student women as well. Not everybody tells us all of the information about them. We'll note that the profiles aren't always 100% complete. And just like when you vote, you don't have to vote the full ballot. You can skip stuff if you want to. When you fill out a profile on Women Also Know Stuff, you can choose to not tell us everything. And so you can choose not to tell us what your position is. And that's fine. From what we do know, we know that most of the folks are faculty, that 67%, 2/3 of folks on our website are in the United States, and the vast majority of them welcome media contact. But again, you know, for those who just aren't comfortable, or maybe for whatever reason you just don't want to have interviews from the press, either temporarily because you're despondent over the election, or permanently because you're just like, no, can't do it, get too nervous, whatever, you can click or unclick that button that says, I'm interested in contact by the media. And so just to emphasize this point that not all of the profiles are complete, you see here on this slide, only 88% of people have selected one research area, right? The negative part of that, the reverse of that, is that 12% of people haven't selected any, and only 59% have filled out an About Themselves section. So again, if people are looking for speakers, if they're trying to figure out whether to invite you to a workshop, if they're trying to find work that's relevant to what they're doing, it doesn't really help them to do searches when there's nothing to be searched. If your profile is only half filled up, if it's just a minimal profile with maybe a link to your website, they're not going to find you. And so folks who are interested in pushing back against implicit bias and having their work recognized and having women's voices be heard in the discipline, it's really important for you to go back into your profile and update it. Tell us what your research areas are. Tell us about yourself. Put in your recent publications, because that's how your work will be amplified, and that's how you will be cited, and that's how you will be included in the work that, in things that your work deserve inclusion in. So we want to encourage folks to check their profiles, see if they've actually filled it out completely, and keep them updated. If you get a journal acceptance, if you get a book published, please come back to Women Also Know Stuff and update your profile, or maybe tell us about some recent media that you've had, so folks can see what you've been doing, what you're up to. Not surprisingly, because we are women in political science, we have a strong representation of folks who study gender and politics, but women study more than gender, right? We've got experts on all sorts of areas: conflict processes, race and ethnicity, foreign policy, political economy, international law. We've got stuff, we've got people who do pretty much everything. And this is a big part of pushing back against that implicit bias, that you don't just call women because you're writing a story about gender, although you should do that too, but that you call women and you cite women and you invite women to speak when you're doing something related to foreign policy, or when you're doing something related to election administration or conflict, right? So we've got experts in all sorts of things, because women know stuff about lots of stuff.
Melissa, a question just came in. I think this would be good to answer just right now. So an anonymous viewer asks, if I'm not currently a grad student, but I'm applying to grad school, can I be included? I was part of a PhD program for 4 years, but had to leave, and I'm trying to get into another program now. I'm not sure if I can be on the site.
Well, I think if you consider yourself a political scientist and you have plans of going back and being a grad student, I hate to speak for the whole board. I'd be inclined to say probably that's okay. And you should definitely create a profile. And then if we have a concern about an individual's profile that we're not sure if they belong, we'd probably contact you. It's usually a more clear-cut case than that. Sometimes people want to join the site and they're poets or they're engineers. And we're like, yeah, you're a woman who knows stuff, but we don't do that.
If I can just jump in really quickly on that, Melissa. I think we do ask for an institutional affiliation as part of your registration. So as long as you have an institutional affiliation that you can list, it should be fine.
Yeah. I mean, we're not trying to exclude people. We're trying to include people. But of course, so if you're a political scientist, it's probably fine, right? Okay, going back to those fabulous slides. As you can see, people often are searching for words that are related to gender and women, although the most common keyword is policy. But it's not all about that. People are searching for experts on security. People are searching for experts on conflict. So again, while our site is kind of maybe overrepresenting women who study gender and politics, and that's what folks are looking for when they come to the site, they're also looking for experts in other areas. So it's a website for political scientists of all sorts. When folks go and look on the website to find people, at least last month, what we found is, again, there's this tendency to focus on gender and politics, and of course, not surprisingly, they were interested in stuff about the debates and the elections. The Women Also Know Stuff website had special pages that we put up where women who agreed to be part of our special features were included as experts on the election, experts in terms of being able to respond to the debate and respond to media inquiries about the debate. And we were able to include scholars about election administration, folks who are specialists in Latino politics, including some bilingual scholars. And so we're happy to say that those got a lot of hits, and we've seen that a lot of those women did get contacted by the media. But again, it's not all about that. Folks are coming to the site and looking at who we've got listed for political theory, who we've got listed for Asian politics, who we've got for political psychology. So really a broad range of folks coming to the site and looking at all sorts of different issues. Here's our top searched phrases. Again, women's rights come to the top, but that's not all it is. You'll note a lot of people are really interested in Donald Trump, which is not surprising. And I want to mention that not a lot of women scholars on our site had the word Trump or Donald Trump on their profile, right? That isn't something that we might normally think of as, I'm an expert on responding to inquiries about Donald Trump, or why folks might be supporting or voted for Donald Trump. And that recalls this advice we would have to folks to constantly think about updating their profiles. If you see that something's happening and, oh my gosh, Donald Trump is president, and I have stuff to say about why that happened and what needs to happen in the future, you might want to go into your profile and say somehow that you're an expert on Donald Trump. And it's because if you're interested in talking about that and getting media inquiries and being invited to post-election discussions about what the heck happened, users of the website will not find you as easily if you don't have the words Donald Trump listed in your profile. And that's true for all sorts of things. If you want to get included in work and in media coverage of ongoing events, sometimes that means ongoing updating of your profile. I'm just going to do one more slide before turning it over to Christina. I'll note that when people go onto the site, they're often searching for specific universities. So where you are matters, and that might be because they're looking for somebody local. And again, that we had a lot more Trump-related searches. As the Trump phenomenon emerged and continued, more and more folks are looking for somebody who can explain what's happening about Trump. And so, unfortunately, not a lot of our experts had the name Trump in their profiles, and we want to make the website useful. So please update your profiles and include words that you think folks might be looking for. And with that, I will turn it over to our next fabulous panelist.
Okay, Christina, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about our social media outreach, which right now really focuses on Twitter. I can't hear myself, so I hope that you can hear me all right. From the very beginning, we can
hear you just fine.
Great. So from the very beginning, I think within days of creating the website, which did come first, we grabbed up the Women Also Know Twitter handle to make sure that we had a presence in this emerging and important aspect of social media outreach. And so you can find us at Women Also Know on Twitter. And that really is our main way of actively engaging with and promoting women experts, particularly with journalists, but with other political scientists as well. We now have, let's see if I can get this moving, more than 5,400 followers. And again, that ranges from political scientists to journalists who use our site, use our Twitter account to follow and see what female political scientists are up to. We've had almost or more than 38 million total potential impressions since February 2016. And so we're very committed to keeping the Twitter account active and sort of constantly are tweeting out additional information throughout the day, 7 days a week. And so if you follow Women Also Know stuff, what are you going to see? And so sort of consistent with our mission, we try to do a couple of things. We highlight when female experts in political science are cited in the news, and that's obviously everything from monkey cage blogs to interviews in the New York Times to podcasts to wherever else you see women being represented as experts, because we know that part of this implicit bias comes from the fact that women are often absent from public discussions and are not called upon to speak out on these sorts of issues. We also try to promote the work of women experts more generally, and so interesting papers that are published, results that are coming out from speakers or papers being presented at conferences, new books that come out, etc. Whatever comes by our way, if we can promote it through our Twitter feed and make sure that other people are aware that it's out there, that there's this interesting, important work being done by female political scientists across the spectrum. I want to emphasize that, as my other board members have emphasized. In this last election, certainly we had a lot of women political scientists commenting on things like the Hillary Clinton phenomenon, but we've also had and been retweeting people who write on, labor and trade issues as they had to do with the election, or authoritarian governments, or impact on foreign policy, etc. And then finally, we do some tweeting of sort of what I would call professionalization issues, items of interest to women in political science. So emerging scholarship on citation rates, climate issues, teaching evaluations, all those sorts of things. We will from time to time tweet out about those issues as well. We definitely want to hear from you. We are always happy to have more content. And so all of us on the board are always feeding our Twitter person as much content as we can. But you know, the very idea of Women Also Know Stuff is to try to sort of break up networks and expand who we're talking to. And so anything you can do to help us be aware of your work. If you publish a new paper, if you write a new book, tweet it to us at Women Also Know Stuff. Tweet about it and include our hashtag, Women Also Know Stuff. You can send us, if we follow you and you follow us, you can send us a direct message at Women Also Know. And then at the last 2 conferences, and again, I'll remind you, as established as we seem, Women Also Know Stuff has only been around since February of 2016, but we have both at MPSA 2016 and at APSA 2016 developed separate hashtags that were actually quite popular to, again, try to promote the work of women that was being presented at those conferences. And we would love to see that being done at every and any kind of conference, ISA, LASA, whatever it is, where there are women experts who are talking about their work. We'd love to hear about it, and we'd love to help promote it and make our 5,400 followers know about it too. Just to give you a sense of what our Twitter account looks like. This is basically all of our activity since we were founded in February 2016. And I think what you can see is the sort of spurt of activity right when we were founded. This big spike in April is MPSA. Obviously it's summer and we all went away for a while. And then sort of re-engagement, particularly in the last couple of months around the election and as we've sort of grown and become more established. If you look specifically just since September, what you're going to see is particular activity really driven by events. And as we go forward, this is another thing we keep talking about, not just the election, but all sorts of events, Brexit, foreign policy events, the inauguration, whatever it is that's happening in the real world, we want to make sure that we're making people aware of political experts who are women, who have something to contribute to that discussion. I'll just note, if you enjoyed those network analyses of tweeting at APSA 2016, that Women Also Know Stuff, along with APSA Tweets and Monkey Cage Blog, were really sort of the top nodes. That was mostly, of course, because people were so desiring to hear what it was that women were up to in terms of their research. We also sort of stumbled, more or less by accident, into something of a social media campaign, a sort of modern branding sort of an event, which is, we thought it would be fun to bring some stickers to the conference. And since we are right now mostly self-funding, we only had a small number of stickers. And this turned into a really fun competition in which the search for stickers, which each of the 10 board members had at APSA, became something of an online phenomenon. I think I got flagged down by several strangers who had seen my face on the editorial board page and wanted to know if I still had stickers. And so I will assure everyone out there who I know is, I'm sure, also concerned about stickers, that we have produced more. We will have them at future conferences, and there may be other ways to get stickers as well. And to proclaim, and I should say, we have a great picture on Twitter of David Lake, APSA president, with his Women Also Know Stuff sticker. Just to give you a sense of the sort of things that we're talking about, this is just a word cloud of sort of Women Also Know Stuff tweets and the sort of issues that are being raised and the sort of people that have been most active there. Most of the tweets, the things that we're retweeting, the people that we're promoting, are tweets by women. And given that Twitter is not an actually overly feminine place, I think what you see there is that we really do work hard at promoting the voices of women on social media. We're tweeting from all over the world. We do get tweets from lots of different places, although mostly, as you might expect, from the United States. And with that, I will turn it over to my next colleague.
Okay, Amber, are you the last speaker?
I am. I'm the last. I'm gonna wrap up by talking about where we're going from here. All right. And Gina, I see your question. Is there any funding to send 1 to 2 scholars to each major conference specifically to follow female scholars, women's events, and tweet about them? So I get to say I'm answering that live. And we would love for there to be funding, and currently we don't have it. So I want to talk about what our ideas are to get that funding and where we go from here. The first thing that we want to do is to see whether we are having an impact. We started this whole adventure just in February of this year, but we think, and it seems, at least through anecdotal evidence, that we are having an impact, but we're scientists and we can study this stuff. And so resources allowing, we would love to have some focus groups at conferences. We'd love to send out a systematic survey across the country to see how many people are using the site and how many people have updated their syllabi or their colloquia invites because of this adventure. And we also think that we have a lot of publicly available data that we could harness to see whether this shock of Women Also Know Stuff being invented, if this has had an impact on the percentage of women on syllabi, of the percentage of women who are featured in blogs, and the percentage of women's citations in articles. So these are all things that, again, resources allowing, we would really like to do, and we are on it. And we have a lot of other big ideas too. Specifically, we've been overwhelmed, both in good and bad ways, by the media coverage, by the interest among journalists in Women Also Know Stuff, and that's been phenomenal and so exciting. And our initial intent was truly to focus primarily on shifting the discipline level of recognition towards female scholars. And so we want to have more impact within the discipline. We want to spread the word about women's research through podcasts, maybe blogging, interviews, features. We also, to Gina's question, we love the idea of supporting women scholars travel to talks and to conferences. Emily mentioned the funding, the NSF funding that is available to support underrepresented groups, including women, to attend PolMeth, and that's been meaningful. I also benefited from that one year. It's been a really meaningful experience to women. We want to fuel that kind of participation, not just in PolMeth, but in other conferences as well, and to be an increasing presence in colloquia on campuses. We also want to increase our social media presence, both by continuing to have guest tweeters and featured pages for major issues, not just in the United States like the election, but for all of the subfields and their important events. And we also want to add Facebook. Currently, we're only on Twitter, and that's been an exciting enterprise, but there are other social media platforms out there. We'd like to add Facebook. And we've received countless inquiries from people, from women in other disciplines saying, hey, we'd really either like to join your site or we'd like to make our own site. And so we, again, resources allowing, we'd like to be able to put together some materials and some handbooks about how to talk to the media and how to put together this kind of website for other disciplines. Within our own discipline, we'd like to do some promotion of different tools for how to do an interview with a journalist. This is not something that we tend to learn in grad school. And for those women who are on the site and who have checked that box for being available for media contact, that can sometimes be a foreign experience to get that phone call from that journalist or to do that TV interview. And so we'd like to support that kind of professionalization training. In conjunction with that idea, we want to partner with media organizations to see if we can institutionalize the access that journalists have to women scholars. And we want to have additional mentoring and networking events similar to the Visions and Methodology Conference that Emily mentioned, but again, extending beyond just methodology to all the subfields. These are great ideas, we think, and they're going to take a lot of work. And so the thing that the editorial board has been talking a lot about is the sustainability of this project. We are not even a year into it, and it's been a wonderful, exhilarating, exhausting adventure. And so sustainability is really an issue because we want to make sure that we have the resources and the energy to continue. But part of that that part of that hinges on making sure that we have attention from the political science discipline and from journalists, but mostly from the political science discipline. We need to make sure that we don't lose momentum. That means that we need basic infrastructure support. Maintaining the website takes a lot of energy and a lot of money. We need to be able to maintain the social media presence and to do all these other things that I talked about on the last slide. That takes money, that takes effort, and it takes human capital. We have had a lot of discussions about what happens when some of our current editorial board just has a burnout or shifts to take a sabbatical and needs to transition in and out. We want especially to do long-term planning to figure out how we're going to pay for all this. Those stickers that we handed out in short supply at APSA and that we've printed more of now, they are high quality stickers, and no joke, they cost a lot of money. And so just the stickers, just that part of it, it's not a ton of money, but it's some money. And currently we're just funding it out of our own research funds. So currently at this moment, we have had some buy-in from our very generous home departments, but currently everything is just happening on a shoestring budget, and it costs money to host the website and to buy the domain name and to keep it purchased and to hire, if we need to, a programmer to help us with some of the finer grained things. Yana, who runs the website, has been masterful so far, but it's all about sustainability. We are very excited that we think we have an NSF grant pending, but even that will only cast us through the next couple of years. And so beyond that, it's a real question of what kind of long-term financial sustainability we would have. But the biggest thing I want to emphasize is that we need to keep up this momentum, this awareness in the discipline. And to do that, the thing that you can do that is most important is that if you're a woman who knows stuff, you should update your profile and make sure that it's full and rich and searchable. And if you know a woman who knows stuff, then you should encourage her to sign up for the site if she hasn't already, but to make sure that her profile is full and rich, because as the others have said, it only works if the website, which is our key contribution, if that website is useful for both scholars and for journalists. That is it, and this is a picture of Sebastian. He is Yana's dog.
All right, thanks everyone for the presentation. At this point, the roundtable is available to take questions from the audience, and you can ask a question using the Q&A button in your Zoom webinar window. And while we're waiting for some questions to come in, so this is a methodology colloquium series, and methods is kind of interesting with regard to this project because it's not what I would consider to be a particularly public-facing subfield. I personally don't do a lot of interviews. Maybe it's just because I suck, but it's probably because NBC doesn't want to hear about instrumental variable models. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to hear about p-values very often. And so the Women Also Know Stuff initiative is really a big part of it is about increasing visibility in these sort of public forums. I saw Andra Gillespie on the NewsHour the other night. That's the kind of thing I sort of expect from it. What is it that Women Also Know Stuff can do to increase participation in the methods community where that's not the issue, right? We don't have a lot of journalist interview kind of stuff. And yeah, go ahead. I'm not, yeah, just.
Well, I think a really obvious one is in the wake of the polling failure. The world could really use some more experts explaining the limitations of polls, what a margin of error means, what oversampling means. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding out there about what the polls were doing and what the polls weren't doing, and that's the sort of thing that a methods expert could help explain, either with a blog post or by updating their profile. So maybe when the media has questions about how did we get the polls so wrong and what can be done to get it right next time, that there could be women speaking to the media about that.
I'd like to add two things to that, and I agree entirely with Melissa. I think one of the things that we've had to sort of confront, and I think it's true of all of us, and maybe particularly of women due to sort of socialization and bias and all those sorts of things, is thinking about what it means to be an expert. So it might not be that sort of your cutting edge, sophisticated research is something that journalists want to hear about, but it may be that stuff that you know that you think, well, why would I say that? All political scientists know that, is not widely known to journalists and to the broader public. So, I wrote a blog piece on the gender gap back in 2012 that got all over the place and got me in the New York Times, saying stuff that any women in politics scholar or any, frankly, student of mine in women in politics as an undergraduate would already have known. It wasn't even really my research. It was sort of reporting on sort of what is sort of known. And so I would encourage everyone out there who thinks, I don't have anything to say to the media. And again, you might not want to because you don't want to use your time that way, or there's nothing that says you have to do that. But don't undercut your own expertise. And then the other piece I'd say in response to Justin's question is, again, the press piece, the press is desperate for people to pick up the phone and give them a quote. So in one sense, this has not been that hard they're like, you just gave us a list of people, we love you. I'm actually more interested in making sure that when Justin, you're doing this amazing contribution to the discipline of these talks, it's at these sorts of events that we want to make sure that women are among the experts that you feature. And I know that you have featured a number of women, but around our discipline, it's avoiding the manel problem, the panel with all men on it. It's colloquium that are, one male colleague, friend after another, presenting research to graduate students and giving them the impression that there's no women doing interesting research in political science. And so that, I think, for us is a slightly harder nut to crack. Journalists are happy to have our lists and are all on Twitter. Finding ways to make sure that political scientists come is a little different. And I'll just end with an anecdote. Very early in this process, David Lake wrote us an email and said he had just finished a paper, and he, at the suggestion of a colleague, went on to the Women Also Know Stuff website and went to the conflict page and said he kept going, oh yeah, of course she works on this. And oh yeah, she's got a paper that's perfect for this point I want to make. And he said that he went from, citations for his paper that was about a third women to about half women. That kind of behavior is something we'd like to find ways to encourage.
And can I just jump in with another addition here? So the categories that Melissa mentioned that you select when you sign up basically follow the APSA sections. That's how we did it. But we did little tweaks, like rather than political methodology, we have research methods and research design to try to make a little more connection with folks in the media, right? To make it seem a little bit more broad in that way. But the second point is to exactly Christina's point, that we really are looking to shift perceptions of expertise within our own discipline. And so if you use the keywords, because we mentioned there are 112 profiles that come up under the research design, research methods section. But if you use a keyword search and you search methods, you'll get 79 profiles that pop up. And if you search methodology, you'll get 31 profiles that pop up. So there are women there for methodologists to find and engage with, even as Christina said, if you don't want to engage with the media at all.
We have a question from the audience. So someone asks, can we work as a volunteer RA for this initiative? And I would add on, if I assume from Emily's face that you can, so how do you do that?
So we have a list. I'll answer that one. We have a list that we have started of people who have asked exactly this question. And so if you're watching this and you would like to volunteer, then you can email me and say, hey, I'd be interested in volunteering. The truth is that right now we have been stretched so thin to cover the election on Twitter and to make sure that the website is maintained and to put together these special pages with election experts and applying for this grant. And we've just finished up a forthcoming piece for PS about the Women Also Know Stuff initiative. The truth is that right now, I don't know that we would know what task to give out, but we are on it. And so if you send me an email and say it's Boydstun@ucdavis.edu and you say, hey, I'd be interested in volunteering, then I will add your name to the list. And as soon as we have a conference call, our next conference call probably in January, hopefully we will finally tackle this question of how to lay out some tasks that would be really helpful for us. That is the answer.
I think all faculty understand the problem of wanting to take advantage of RAs, but literally not having enough time to figure out what to give RAs to do, and that's definitely on our agenda.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to put my email in the Q&A.
There's a chat window as well. That's how we share the slides.
I'll put it both places.
Well, while she's doing that, I'm going to start with a banal observation. There is no men also know stuff, and yet there seem to be no shortage of men sort of available for panels and journalist interviews and whatnot. And so obviously there's some sort of existing traditional system by which these certain people are sort of promoted or get into these. And ultimately, I would think that what we want to do is have those traditional networks which are sort of there to be more diverse. So how is it that the Women Also Know Stuff initiative is going to, right now it's sort of trying to augment that. Ultimately, I think what one would want to do is be a part of that. So how does that happen?
I'll take a stab at that first, Justin. It's an excellent question. So the way we see our role is that if there are individuals, which I've known you for a while, so I know there are, who want to disrupt those traditional networks of connection and influence, we are providing a resource for them. So we think of what we do as, yes, there's a sort of missing component that is we need individuals who take the time to think about wanting to include women where women are not currently included. And then there you go. We've got a website for you, right? So we see, and I think though our social media presence helps with a little pressure on that front too, right? I mean, I think we all sort of identify as women who like to be helpful. And so this is a way we can be helpful to the discipline more broadly. Like we're not perhaps the most aggressive group of feminists you've ever met, but we do see this function. I mean, so what we need, right, is we need those individuals who are in the networks now to start using the site. And that's really the key. And so it's having access to fora like this that really help in that regard.
And if I could add to that, I think one of the things that Women Also Know Stuff does is just affect, I mean, disrupt is the right word. At the last APSA, we heard from section chairs who were literally like, I'm really sorry that this panel didn't have any women on it, but I didn't, it came together and there was no one that come up in this sort of topic. Just the fact that people are thinking in those terms, and we are not into shaming, we are into making possible and assisting people of goodwill who want to sort of have a discipline that represents the diversity of expertise. But already at APSA, there was sort of this perception from a number of people that, boy, this is something we have to pay attention to. And I think that's just the first step. Would we like it if eventually ideas of expertise had become so without gender bias that we didn't have to worry that women weren't getting cited at the same rates and weren't invited at the same rates and didn't get funded at the same rates? Yes, put us out of business. That would be fantastic. We could have our conference calls and just chit chat about other things, our own work, etc., and not do this project. I think we're probably a few years off from being put out of business.
A few years. That's optimistic. Yeah, we'll solve all these problems in a couple of years. Everything will be fine. You mentioned Emily specifically. You mentioned the Vim initiative, which is something that a lot of methodologists are familiar with, even if as being men we don't participate usually. I'm curious about what you think. So you mentioned a lot of mentorship as being sort of the key role that it plays. Is that the only causal mechanism by which Vim gets people into the community, or what I'm curious about is, so if I wanted to, obviously I can't replicate Vim, but if I want to replicate the causes that sort of increase participation in the community by women, what are those causes?
So networking, I would argue, is every bit as important as, even though, right, I still chafe a little bit at sort of corporate speak like networking, but I really think it is critical. The people you meet, the contacts you make, some of whom serve mentorship roles, some of whom become co-authors, collaborators, people that you then end up on an editorial board with. And so I think the networking is critical. I do think that part of what makes VIM work, though, and this is, again, back to that concern about, you know, how we sort of disrupt the traditional networks. I think that there's a stage where certain individuals don't see themselves as experts. And so if you put them in a situation with people who currently do see themselves as experts, they are overwhelmingly going to get lost in that, and it's just going to perpetuate their marginalization. So I think very often what you need is to create an environment. I mean, so to give you an example, like, if you knew a guy who had a master's in statistics, worked in Gary King's lab, published in PA with Gary King, and taught the method sequence for their grad program, you'd call that person a methodologist, probably, right? Except that I know a woman who has those credentials who does not identify as a methodologist. And so to me, part of, again, it's a process, right? Where we're not just going to get women to that point where they perceive themselves and everyone else perceives them to have that expertise. But so to me, there's something about the sort of sheltered nature of it, the close community, the intimacy that allows women to come to see themselves in a different way before then they're interacting with the people who already see themselves in that particular way.
Which means, Justin, that even outside an environment like a conference, even in one-on-one meetings with students, I think that all faculty, especially male and female faculty, we should be remembering that, as Emily said, the strongest form of implicit bias is the implicit bias that we have in our own heads about ourselves. And so anything that you can do to coax women and men, but especially women, to see themselves as methodologists, if they are indeed in your mind a methodologist, then that's all for the better.
There's a not to plug my own stuff here, but we had this similar conversation at APSA this last time, and it got me thinking. We really need a series in PS or something called essentially "What is a Methodologist?"
Yeah,
because
you could get a bunch of women to write for that.
We have a proposal in, and it's half women, half men, and then also at different ranks. We have full, associate and assistant, and we're still waiting to hear. So PS editors, get back to me. But we are an interesting subfield in the sense that I think we police our boundaries a lot more vigorously. I've never heard someone say, "You're not a real Americanist," but I've definitely heard people say, "You're not a real methodologist," and I don't know if that has a differential gender impact. I can tell you almost every real methodologist has been called not a real methodologist at least once. But maybe that deters disproportionately women. It would shock me if that they did. Yeah, I don't really know what to do about that, but other than just what the things you just said. But okay, well, we're actually out of time. So I try to be very I try to police that boundary. So that's all we have time for this week. This is the last presentation of the 2016 calendar year. However, we will be back in 2017 with presentations from Phil Schroet, Gina Reinhardt, Jane Sumner, Enos Levin, and many more presenters. And I'm also, so while you're there, I'm trying to put together a last-minute panel on polling in the election and the failure of and success of polling and forecasting. So if you are a woman who knows stuff about polling and forecasting, get in touch with me. Visit our website, www.methods-colloquium.com, for details about these and other presentations. And I will see everyone next year. Thank you very much for participating today.
Justin, thank you for having us.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Justin.
See you later.
Bye.